Hey everybody, this is Robert Jeffrey, editor-in-chief for BlackSci-Fi.com. I am obviously not Maurice Waters, the name at the bottom, but we are here talking with DC, actually not even DC Comics, just DC Comics writer extraordinaire, Geoffrey Thorne.
Okay.
Yeah, Geoffrey Thorne. You have read his work at Marvel, at DC, on the indie level with Prodigal of the First, Prodigal of the First Egg, the First Light. I'm sorry, I'm
Egg of first light.
Egg of First Light.
Relax.
Yeah, I got like tongue tied. Prodigal Egg of First Light. Dark Horse work. He's a screenwriter. He's worked on Avengers, Black Panther, with Black Panther's Quest, Powers, the book two. Yeah, book two.
Yeah, ghost, baby.
Ghost. Yeah, Law and Order. Um, Criminal Intent, and just a bunch of other stuff, and also prose fiction with the franchise that's represented right behind me with Star Trek. So a lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff that you're doing. How are you doing today,
I'm
Joffrey?
great.
Good,
I'm
good,
great,
good,
man.
good.
It's just Jeff. Just say Jeff. I'm using it,
Jeff,
Jeff.
okay, Jeff. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
Jeff.
I'm good, man. I mean, we
Good,
just
man.
wrapped up the season one of Ghost,
Hmm.
the show, and
Nice.
the audience really dug it. And I was amazed because I was like, "We're gonna make a show about Tariq,"
That's what's up.
and everybody hates Tariq. Like, are you reading this stuff? And the people want to kill this man.
Yeah.
And Courtney was like, "We're gonna turn him around," and we turned him
Hmm.
around.
That's
Everybody's
what's
like,
up.
"Oh, cool!" And I was like, "Wow, go girl! It's all about you." So that was fun.
Nice,
And I got these books coming out this month and next month from both of the big companies.
nice.
I got a Black Panther one shot next month, King in
Okay.
Black tie-in. I got another thing from Marvel, which I could discuss it, but I don't want to because it's a 10-page. Me and Mark Bernardin are sharing Planet of Symbiotes number 2.
Okay.
And he's got a story, and I've got a story, and they're both half the book. But
Nice.
my story deals with a long-standing Marvel character, and if I say anything about who that is, it will blow up the story. So
Okay.
I can't say who it is. But
Nice.
and then I've got obviously the Truth and Justice thing with Vixen started last week,
Yeah.
and starting tomorrow, Green Lantern Future State, and
That's
then in
what's up.
April I take over the main Green Lantern book.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm happy.
that's what we want to dig into. One of the first things I want to mention is, um, my background as far as with you is
We go
strangely
back.
enough, yeah, strangely enough, comes from watching reruns of In the Heat of the Night. My mom is a big, I'll just let it go. But my mom is a big. She's like crime procedurals,
Sure,
and
sure.
that show kind of broke the just kind of broke the mold with a lot of procedurals, and I remember her like loving it for that, for that
Everybody's
reason.
mom loves that show.
Yeah,
Everybody's mom loves that show.
I mean, and well, personally for me, I mean, I love the movie, for with Sidney Poitier, and then to see that kind of revitalized with the TV show, which I started to watch later on, was really awesome. So, thank
Thank
you
you.
for your for your work on that.
We
But
had a great time.
yeah,
We loved it. I mean, I lived in Atlanta, around Atlanta, not actually in Atlanta for
yeah,
what 4 years because of
okay,
that show, almost 5 years. We for the time period because I would honestly, if somebody offered me that show to write and run right now to
man,
reboot it, I would
yeah,
dive on it with both feet because all the stuff we could do would be different. But for
yeah,
that time period, yeah, it was
yeah.
great. I'm happy. I still get fan mail every once in a while. Don't ask me for pictures, y'all. I haven't been an actor for 20 years. I don't have any pictures left. All the pictures are gone. I don't
Right,
have
right,
any
right.
pictures.
And
But yeah, so
yeah,
thank you.
yeah, not a problem. And the funny story, I actually when I was used to go when I was in Boy Scouts, or we would have to travel through that town that you all like filmed in, to get to
Oh,
our campsite.
Covington?
Yeah, yeah,
Covington?
yeah, in Covington. Yeah, it's crazy, but I'm still in Georgia myself.
Oh wow! You know they shot Vampire Diaries in that town,
Yeah,
and I didn't know
hmm,
that until they went through the town square. I was like, "Wait a minute, that's Sparta!
yeah,
What are y'all talking about?"
exactly. Yeah, so it's like Atlanta's definitely stepped up as far as with the Hollywood
Oh
side of
hey,
things, and
Hollywood
that's
South for sure,
exactly, which is
for
cool. But
sure.
yeah, yeah, you need to pitch that. I need to see
I
In the Heat
mean,
of the
that's a
Night with you
thing
as a
where
showrunner.
they gotta want to do it.
Yeah,
But yeah, if anyone ever approached me or said that they were looking for someone to run a show like that,
yeah.
I would die to take in the heat of the night and do it in a modern flavor. That would be great.
That's what's up.
Anyway, well,
Yeah,
I'm
but
glad you
yeah,
enjoyed
yeah,
it. Tell your mom hi.
yeah,
Hi from
yeah. I will.
Florida.
I let her know. But
Hi,
yeah,
Margaret's mom.
everybody's like watching this and just like, I thought you were talking about like Green Lantern and Vixen. I was like, okay, I just had to
Yeah.
put that
All
out
right.
there.
Let's get on the real
Let's get into
stuff.
the comic book stuff. Yeah, yeah. So, um, dude, this is huge. Like,
It
this is,
is.
yeah,
What the hell?
this is huge. Like when I saw the announcement with a bunch of people that I'm familiar with that I can, call like, friends or whatever or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot or acquaintances, and I saw your name attached to Green Lantern, I got really hyped because I know that you have a love for like space operas, specifically with Star Trek.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a perfect pairing, especially with your background. And I, just kind of got hyped. And I think myself and a number of other specifically black nerds or people of color who just want to see us represented behind the scenes of telling these stories. It was kind of a big thing. So, one of my first questions was when you got the opportunity to let's start with John Stewart
Yeah. Go.
with an opportunity to pitch for that. How did that blow your blurred mind and your space opera loving mind?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a really long version of the story, but basically, I think what happened on the DC side, I don't know this. I'm just a freelancer. I think a lot of people have the idea that we're all like sitting in the same room together and there's like some sort of smoking room and everybody's sitting around deciding what's going to happen. It's not like that, right? I barely know anyone over there. I've never seen my own editor face to face. We talk on the phone. We
Right.
have email conversations, even before Zoom and all that. I've never seen my own editor. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know what it even looks like, right?
Right.
So at some point, I guess over a year ago now, Dan DiDio, who used to be the editor in chief of
Mhm.
DC Comics, I guess he was putting out feelers, and my
Okay.
name came up in somebody's conversation, and a friend of mine called and said, "Look, your name came up. Are you interested in, talking to DC about doing something comic book wise?"
Hmm.
That's it. Like not even John Stewart yet. And
Okay.
I was like, "What? Really? My name came up? Okay, yeah. Why not?" Right. So then he told me about this thing they were doing called 5G,
Hmm.
which the fans were losing their minds about back then in a negative way. I guess it's a whole long thing, but
Yeah.
basically they're about to revamp the DC line,
Right.
like in a big giant way. A lot of stuff was going to change, but nobody knew what it was. So the fans, of course, went all negative.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be awful. It's going to be awful. I'm here to tell you what they showed me what 5G was going to be. I was like, damn, in a good way. I was
Yeah.
like, holy crap. I mean, this was extensive.
Wow.
But it was also everything that geeks like us, everything you ever argued about at a comic book shop, why don't they do this? If this happened, why, this makes no sense. If this person loves that person, then why did they do, like, how many versions of Hawkman are there? Like,
Right.
all of this stuff, they fixed all of it.
Okay.
All of it. It was like
Nice.
the freaking Manhattan Project building the bomb the first time. Like they had charts. I mean, you can't imagine the complexity of this. I don't know
Wow.
how many people worked on it. And they showed me this. And I was like, okay, so what do you want from me? Right?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what pitches do you have? And I was like, well, I didn't know any of this stuff that you guys are doing, but here are my pitches,
Right.
right? And I just threw out a whole bunch of different stuff, probably between 15 and 17 different ideas. One of them was related to John,
Hmm.
right? I had a Blackhawks pitch. There's a thing I wanted to do sort of in the Sandman universe. There's just a
Yeah.
bunch of stuff to which they said, nope, 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 nope. We're not doing, nope, that's crazy. We're not doing that, nope,
Right. Right.
right? Then I finally got down to the John Stewart thing. And I said, look, here's what I feel about John. Here's what I like to do with John. And Dan was like, yeah, that'll work. And I was like, that'll work? Of all of the stuff you said no to, that it was too crazy, you think this is the good one? And he's like, yeah, I like that. Now tell me more about it. And I said, well, blah, 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 blah. Right? And I want to do this, and I want to explore this about the character, and I want to do this thing with him.
Okay.
And I think the thing that he hooked into was, at least for the first part of the story, I was like, he's not going to have his ring for a while. He's not going to be able to lean on that.
Okay.
Right? And I think that's what sparked him, because then he said, well, we have this plan to do this with the Green Lanterns.
Hmm.
This fits into that. Can you make it fit more if you do this, this, and this? And I was like, well, that doesn't hurt the story. So
Right.
sure.
Nice.
Basically, what I pitched them out was a solo John Stewart story. They're
Hmm.
like, can you add a couple of the other Green Lanterns to that so that he has company from the original core instead of
Right.
just being by himself? And I was like, yeah, let's go.
That's
So
what's up.
I went off to write out what we would call a pitch document,
Yeah.
which is sort of turning into text what we had said in the office. So it's
Hmm.
about 2 pages, 3 pages long. DC buys that,
Hmm.
right? Because they have to pay for that work.
Right.
Sent that out. Dan was all over it, and then he got fired 2 weeks later.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I was like, I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Right? Because if the
Yeah.
boss buys it and he just got fired, that tells you what the company thinks,
Yeah.
right? But no, the new guys came in and they were basically, this is a really long story short, but
Yeah.
basically they were like,
Yeah.
we like 90% of everything you had worked out with Dan. If you scrap this last 10%, can you
Hmm.
still do the book? And I was like, do you want me to still do the book? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, let's go. So I wrote out a different kind of document for them. And they're like, yes, we like this. Can you turn this into an arc?
Okay.
Right? Like a multi-comic, multi-issues, several issues, at least a year's worth. Can this stretch out like that? And I was like,
Hmm.
hey, this can take as long as y'all want it to take. Right? Like, we can keep going. But
That's what's up.
understand that my plan is pretty radical. Are you down for this plan?
Hmm.
Right? And they were like, if it sells, what you change will stay the way it is. If it doesn't,
Wow.
done. Pretty simple. And I was like, "Are you guys serious?" Because I had the same conversation with Dan, and he got. I'm not being funny. I had the
Yeah.
same conversation with Dan.
Hmm.
I always ask people up front so they can't say later that they didn't know.
Hmm.
Right? I was like, "Now you understand? I'm taking John from here way over here. After a certain point, there's not going to be a lot of coming back.
Right.
So, are you down for that?" And they're like, "That's if the public is down for that. If you do it well and they like it and they buy enough of it, then everything you change stays.
Wow.
If they don't like it, it's going to have to snap back, right?" And I was like, "All right, so you're cool with it, and I'll just have to make sure that there's sort of like a little back door in it
Hmm.
that if the public doesn't like it and you give me notice, like, okay, Jeff, you got to wrap it up and put him back where you found him,
Right.
that you can
Right.
do that and it doesn't seem stupid, right?"
Yeah. And that's the cool thing because I think that at the end of the day, I think people forget that you're playing with somebody else's toys. And so you're getting
Mm-hmm.
paid to play with somebody else's toys.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always going to be that, you know, it's kind of give and take. You know,
Yeah,
it's a give and
yeah,
take, and
it
it's
has
like,
to be.
yeah, and finding that balance. I'm glad that you were able to find that balance between, you know, Dan and everybody who came in. So that, I mean, came in afterwards. So that's good.
I'm pretty
Um,
easy like that. Like,
yeah.
usually what I always tell everybody, and it bites them on the ass sometimes. They
Hmm.
think it means I'm going to say yes all the time, which is
Right.
not true. I'm there to serve the story. So
Yeah.
once we agree what the story is, anything that helps the story, I'm for it.
Hmm.
Anything that hurts the story, I'm against it.
Okay.
Doesn't matter who says it. Doesn't matter if you're the president of the company, if you're the artist, or if you're somebody out in the world sending me notes like, you should do this. I'm like, no, that hurts the story. I'm never doing that.
Right.
Right? Now, when you're arguing with the company, you go in with the idea that, now look, they're going to win every argument. And I tell people this all the time.
Hmm.
I know you're the company, you own it, so you are going to win every argument, but you're going to have the argument.
Right.
Right?
There you
You're
go.
not going to not have the argument.
Yeah.
What happens is a lot of the times they will say things like, I pitched them a John Stewart story where it was literally just John,
Yeah.
and then they say, hey, can you add in some other Green Lanterns to this?
Hmm.
Well, that doesn't hurt the story I was trying to tell.
Right.
So I say yes. Now, if they said, well, in the middle of this story, we've got this crossover event, can John be in that? And I'm like, no, I put him way over here.
Exactly.
How's he supposed to come back real quick for this event and then shoot back? That's not happening. So
Right.
once it gets to this point in the story, he's basically off limits to everybody else because there's no access. So we would have a fight
Okay.
because I would not know how to.
Yeah.
I would not wish to or be able to, because of the story I'm trying to tell,
Right.
be able to do that. So y'all gonna have to choose another Green Lantern because this one ain't gonna be
Yeah.
available.
It's not gonna work. Yeah.
Right, right. So I say yes a lot, and it makes people think I'm easy in that regard, but
Yeah.
I'm really not. It's really just straight up. Does it help the story or hurt the story? That's
Gotcha.
it.
That's what's up. Yeah. So you've mentioned that you were asked to bring in other lanterns, and a couple that I've seen in the press releases and announcements as far as names. One of them is one of my favorites. When I was in the DC Writers Workshop, I actually pitched a script for her, Jessica Cruz. Jessica
Okay.
Cruz, yeah, she's a personal favorite. The more I learned about her, unfortunately, and I guess fortunately, I got to write a story about John Stewart, so it wasn't Cruz, but
Oh,
yeah. I
cool.
did. I did a John Stewart story for our the anthology that we
Is it
that.
published? Have I read it?
Yeah. It's like a couple years ago. A couple years
Okay,
ago.
I'll dig. I have a bunch of them. I don't
Yeah,
look at always look at the names. I will
yeah,
check it out.
yeah. So it,
Um,
but when I saw her name attached to your, to your future state run or your story, I got, and actually maybe it was she's in there somewhere. I got very
well,
happy. Her
wait,
and
wait. Ryan Cady is writing the Jessica Cruz story in Future State.
okay, so that might
Uh,
be the
yeah, that's
is
she's in
she,
it, but I
it,
didn't write it.
okay, is she appearing in your series?
Not in that part of it, no.
Okay, so
The
that it
part
must
you're
have,
gonna see, and when you
yeah.
read it, you're gonna be happy she's not there. Let me put it
Okay.
to you.
Gotcha. Because I think, and that's that's my mistake. Because I think when I was reading the general kind of synopsis of Future State Green Lantern, I saw her name. Saw her name, and more than likely, I just attached her to your story. So
No, you're
there you
gonna
go.
be. By the way, I they sent us the advanced copies,
Yeah.
right? Like I have one. I have them around here somewhere.
Mhm.
But I had not read any of the other stuff. All
Okay.
I knew was my stuff. When I read that Jessica Cruz story, people are going to be lit up at the end of that story. They're going to be
Wow.
like, "What?"
That's what's up.
Like,
That's what's
dude,
up.
like, I, 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 I don't want to say I can't believe they're letting us do it because that sounds a little crazy.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I think that the DC guys are really bad at is
Hmm.
letting the public understand how free they're
Hmm.
letting the creators be this time.
Yeah.
Like I read that Swamp Thing one that just
Hmm.
came out. I haven't cared about Swamp Thing in 20 years. This one I was like, I'm reading this book.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, right? The Mr. Miracle story that
By
Brandon
Brandon.
Easton wrote.
Yeah, I
I'm
read
so
that
down
too.
for this story. I am ready
Yeah.
for that. And the Outsiders that Brandon Thomas
Brandon
wrote.
Thomas. Yes, the
Come
two
on,
Brandons.
that's like I've been
Yeah.
waiting for that katana to show up for like a decade.
Man.
Like, man, right?
Yeah.
But this doesn't happen unless editorial wants it to
Hmm.
happen.
Yep.
So we see the names, that's great, but they
Hmm.
still could have put their foot down really hard and made these stories generic and boring
Yeah.
and whatever with that. Instead, you're seeing creators flexing. All of us, and
That's
I'm
what's
not
up.
just talking about the guys I know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying everybody is flexing. I think people are going to be, so far people seem to have been pleasantly surprised by
Well,
Future State overall.
yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, you hear that they're going into it's the second and third printings, like multiple printings
Hmm.
at this point. I had a chance to read Batman, the Future State Batman book
Oh,
that
the next Batman?
the next Batman, yeah, which included John Ridley's
Dope.
story. Yeah, I got such a Gotham Central type of ground level feel, and with superheroes, with Batman
Yeah,
making an
yeah,
appearance, and then
yeah,
when Brandon Thomas, you already know that guy can write, like he can write his butt off. So
yeah.
when I see Duke Thomas, popping up in this like awesome car chase and the katana just come and lay it down, I was like, Brandon, you had me at Duke Thomas driving in a car chase,
Right.
and then Easton on Mr.
Mr.
Miracle.
Miracle, that's like a
Yeah,
perfect match.
yeah,
Like,
it's
I'm
like
like,
Metropolis. I need Easton to be writing something Metropolis based from now on, and the same
I
for
agree.
Thomas.
I
So,
agree. So,
um,
but yeah,
yeah,
so they're
So,
flexing, right?
yeah,
They're getting the flex. And
that's what's up.
also, I think, like you're saying about being in the program with them,
Hmm.
DC's had a decades long problem with people of color.
Hmm.
Like, outside in the real world, we've been woofing about that
Hmm.
my whole life. In
Yep.
the last 8 years, maybe
Yeah.
a little bit longer,
Hmm.
they clearly were like, we need to turn this corner. This is not good.
Yeah.
So here you're seeing the results. Somebody's
Yeah.
mind got changed somehow.
And that's what's up there. And shout out to Ryan. He was in my class. So when I saw his name,
Ryan wrote the
yeah,
hell out of that story, yo.
yeah,
Like,
that's awesome.
I read that like, okay, like I'm with this. This is, and the funny thing is, we don't have access. Like the editors don't know, but
Hmm.
theoretically, what he did in his story doesn't hurt in any way mine at
That's
all.
awesome.
Like if I want to fold that in, it's an
Hmm.
easy fit. So that
Right.
says that the editorial side knows what's up too, in the sense of they know what I'm doing, they know what he's doing. We never talk to each other, and yet it will all if
Click.
you wanted to. So
That's what's up.
I'm interested to your reaction to
Yeah,
the
I'll
Jessica
definitely.
Cruz story.
I mean, he knows I'm a Cruise fan, so when I saw it, like I said, now that I know that it's, I was like, okay, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
he crushed it. He crushed
that's
it.
that's what's up. So okay, so one of the things, let's talk about Stewart.
Okay.
The architect, the
Yeah.
marine, the lantern, and for me, next to Cruz, he's one of my favorites. Um, he's been written about for like a minute, so we've had different iterations of him. One of the things I want to say, show off, was shout out to Mr. McDuffie.
Wait. Well, that was
No,
that's the prime John, right?
that's the problem. Yeah,
That's the John we love,
and that's
right?
and I was gonna say, so what did you bring to him?
Mm,
what did you do with him that's going to be different? Are you going to play
well,
more of this
sir,
architect? I mean, like anything you can give us.
it's not. I can tell you this kind of stuff. It's
Hmm.
not that big of a split in that way. The
Okay.
thing that people, what has been good and bad about John is the same thing in comics. Everybody should know I'm not writing the Green Lantern from the show,
Right.
right? He does not exist in comics. That personality guy, his personality is not the same as the one that's in the comics.
Yeah.
He never hooked up with Hawkwoman,
Hmm.
like that never happened, right? That Justice League is not the same Justice League. That's an alternate universe Justice League,
Hmm.
and I love it. We all love it,
Yeah.
but I didn't have those toys to play with. I didn't have any of that. So, in the comics, the interesting thing is also it's the same. It's the weirdest thing. It's either an opportunity or it's a negative, depending on how you look at it. John has been played as the secondary character most of the time
Hmm.
that you've ever seen him in the comics, right? I say this with all good respect. He was a token character. He was there to be black. He was created to be black by very well-meaning Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams. They didn't have any characters like this. Meanwhile, Marvel is running off to a party with all their black people.
Yeah.
And these two guys came in and said, look, you guys are being stupid with this. Let us address some social issues. Let us, like, put some color in here.
Yeah.
Right? Please. Right? And so they created John to be the voice of black people. And for 1973 or whatever, that's sort of a white guy's take on what the Black Power movement was about came out through John. Since then, it's basically been a run of well-meaning white folks writing this guy, but he's always basically been the backfield actor.
Hmm.
So I had to reference it.
Yeah.
John is being an architect means you have a kind of a brain. Your mind works a particular way.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that everything you make has to have an architectural component, but it means the way you approach problems is different than a person like you or me.
Right.
Right? So that's one thing that's going to be very much in evidence with John. He is a foundational planner, which has never really been shown in the comics because the comics have always been bent towards making it look like Hal is the best and only Green Lantern. And I'm like, this is a core of 7,200 individuals.
Can you say that
They're
again?
all the Green Lantern.
Can
There's
you say that
7,200
again?
Green Lanterns.
Thank
There's
you.
7,200 Green Lanterns.
Thank you.
All of them are the
Yes.
Green Lantern.
Hmm.
So at any point I want to put a spotlight on Kilowog, he's
Yes.
the Green Lantern.
Right.
Okay? Anyone who doesn't like that doesn't really grasp what the concept is, right? So we're switching the spotlight over here. At some point when I go away, maybe they switch it over to Jessica or they switch it over to Simon Baz. And each one of them will be the Green Lantern whenever the spotlight swivels.
Right.
Right? So with John being a backfield character, a secondary character, all of these years people have just changed his nature to suit whatever story they were telling. Because the story wasn't really about him. He's just a flavor in somebody else's story, which means he has to do X so that we can have this other thing happen, even if maybe that wasn't really what a guy like that would do. Right? So now coming in at the end state, I got all of these different weird left turns that they made him take that don't really make sense, but now they did happen in comic book continuity, so we can't say he didn't do them. So now I have to go, what one kind of personality would have made all of these choices?
Right.
So that's the John we're getting, and is a very interesting John. He's very smart, smarter than he's ever been played in the comics. He is much more ruthless than he's ever been played in the comics, and that's part of the situation I needed to put him in, which tomorrow you'll see
Hmm.
the beginning of how ruthless John is. You won't even
Right.
see until issue 2 exactly how ruthless John is,
Okay.
right? But the whole point was take the ring away and what have you got? Just some dude? No, the Guardians give these rings to people for very specific reasons.
Right.
They already, in a weird way, you're already a Green Lantern before you get the ring, or
Yep.
you wouldn't get the ring, right?
Right.
So, who is this John Stewart guy? Like when Priest did Who is the Black Panther?
Yep.
This is Who is John Stewart. And by the end of
Man,
it, y'all gonna know who the hell John Stewart
that's
is.
what's up, man. That's
Okay,
and
so the
nice.
Marines are in there, the
Hmm.
Brain is in there,
Hmm.
um, and I gave him an enemy that he doesn't have his ring, because the rings are magic wish rings.
Right.
So you can just, well, I really wish there was some kryptonite here to get rid of those Kryptonians, and if I put enough behind it, I can have that kryptonite.
Right.
Well, what if I take your magic wish ring away? How are you going to be a Green Lantern without that?
Right. That's what's up.
So,
Yeah, and it's a much more complex take on the character, at least from your pitch, and I'm very hyped about it.
oh,
Yeah,
just you watch, just
yeah.
you watch,
Like I said, I'm very
just you
hyped
watch.
about it. Um, and you mentioned the larger core. That's always been something that's kind of stood out to me, is that I love aliens. Like personally speaking, I love aliens, and I love the fact that the Green Lantern franchise lends itself to telling all sorts of stories, focusing on each of these different members.
Yep.
So within, like I said, the story that you're telling, you're also playing within this like larger galactic like backdrop. Like how does it, like I said,
Okay.
you already have a background as far as the Star Trek, but how does it feel kind of being able to kind of play within this larger sandbox and not just be limited to, let's say,
Oh, it's
Earth?
great. I'll tell you
Okay.
why. Two reasons. One, this is the fun part of pitching, the upside of pitching to a company like DC.
Hmm.
They had all this stuff going on, this death metal and then death metal,
Yep.
this whole universe reshape that was going on. I didn't know anything about when I came in. I didn't
Right.
know what I wasn't reading all those books. I see the term death metal. I was like, it looks like a miniseries. I don't really need to pay attention to that. Like
Right.
whatever. I mean, as a fan,
Yeah.
not as a writer. But
Right.
once I come in as a writer, they're like, okay, well, here's what we're doing with death metal, and here's how it's going to wrap up. And I was like, wait, what? What?
That's what's
Like,
up.
so at the end of death metal, which I think just concluded,
Yeah.
basically what they're saying is everything that ever happened in DC Comics is now real. They erased the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and
Hmm.
now it's back to a multiverse, back to a multi-multiverse, the Omniverse,
Right.
right? So basically, every story you've ever read at any point, any time, all that's true.
Hmm.
Everything. I'm like,
Okay.
oh, okay.
Gotcha.
But for my purposes, what that meant was I can one introduce a whole bunch of new species, which I'm doing,
Okay.
and I
Nice.
can add in something that hasn't really been done in the Green Lanterns, which is the exploration component, which I
Hmm.
guess you could say maybe comes from Star Trek, which
Hmm.
is basically the Guardians, because of some political stuff that's going on in the main part of the galaxy. They're like, well, if that's going to happen, you need to go out here and start mapping. You
Okay.
need to meet new people and
That's
offer, do they want a Green Lantern out here? Do you guys want to
right.
be an added sector,
Right.
right? And then we'll place a couple of Green Lanterns in your sector if you want. If
Right.
you don't, we'll move on,
Yeah.
right? But you, as the leader of the Corps, are going to lead that mission. You're going to take 100 or 150 Green Lanterns with you in a big old ship that we make out of ring energy and
Hmm.
fly out there and plant the flag, baby.
Yeah. That's
And
what's up.
so that's the beginning of the story, basically.
Okay.
There's a lot of political stuff that's going on in the galactic DCU right now,
Yeah.
which I didn't have anything to do with. But when they told me what it was, I was like, "What?"
Yeah. I mean,
Bendis did some stuff in Superman that I was like, "Oh, damn, okay, it's like that, huh? Okay."
well,
So
I mean, you see that in Ridley's Batman, especially with the I think it's the magistrate
yeah,
yeah, it's like a police state. It's definitely you're bringing the politics into it.
yeah,
But I think that balance with a good story, you can draw people in. So that I and also like the idea of expanding the Green Lantern Empire and asking for permission versus how it normally happens on our planet or in our country.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
well, that's very interesting because I don't want to spoil anything,
Yeah.
but future state is the future. The
Okay.
other thing that you should know when you read it is, while I was mapping out the first let's call it season, the
Hmm.
first season of the Green Lantern story featuring John, they came to me because I didn't know Future State existed. I was
Yeah.
just doing my job. They said, we're going to do this Future State thing. And I'm like, what the hell? What is Future State? And they're like, well, basically, it's going to be a flash forward.
Hmm.
And I was like, how many years, how many months? What are you talking about? And they're
Right.
like, up to you. But not like next week. Like, it has to
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
jump, right? But some people are going as far as like 1,000 years in the
Yeah.
future, or a year, 10
Yeah.
years, whatever you want, but do that. And I was like, okay, the story gets weird after a certain point. So they're like, we don't care what point, as long as it's exciting and interesting, just go, right? So what you're going to see in Future State is about midway, about halfway, a little bit past halfway in the first arc.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so um, a lot of people are dead. A
Wow.
lot of people are dead.
Hmm.
A lot of people are dead.
Gotcha.
No rings, no power battery. I have
Hmm.
not explained to you what happened or why.
Hmm.
They don't know what happened. They're just stuck out here
Yeah.
and trying to do good in spite of not having their power set. So, but when you get to Green Lantern #1, it
Hmm.
flashes back to now. So
Okay.
none of that stuff that you saw in Future State has happened yet.
Okay.
And so you're going to have to get there. How do we get there? And the one fun part of the DCU is we're probably going to get to some version of there,
Hmm.
but not everything you see you should take at face value.
Okay.
Like, I keep telling everybody, I'm sure you know about the big controversy because I had written over several years, I don't like Hal Jordan.
Okay, so on my part, I wasn't gonna bring the BS up because
No, bring it up.
yeah, I mean, but this is first of all, let me take it back a little bit. Um, Jeff used to write for BlackSci-Fi.com. So you're family. So I'm
Right.
not going to.
Bring it up.
I mean,
Bring it
we're
up.
gonna.
I'm good with
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, but following and also being a fan, I would follow. I mean, I've seen your Twitter post, and I know what your vibe is when it comes to Hal Jordan. So without naming the source of the story,
Doesn't matter.
um,
I'm not going after anybody. Let's just
gotcha.
talk about the thing.
You gotcha. Okay,
I
then
don't like
let's
the.
bring it up.
All right.
Sorry.
Anybody watching, I don't like the idea of Hal Jordan as the best. I don't like the idea that there's a guy with essentially no character that has been written where people inside the story say, "You're the best of us,"
Hmm.
right? Well, who says so? Who says so? That's one. As a writer,
Yeah.
this other Green Lantern thinks that, but Sinestro thinks he's the best Green Lantern. So even after he left, he's like, "I'm the best, y'all." I don't know why you talk about Hal,
Right.
right? That's one. So just in story, I don't agree.
Hmm.
Two, Hal was a Silver Age character. He was created in the Silver Age, which, if you don't know from the audience, there are different ages of comic books. The Golden Age was like the first Superman, the first
Hmm.
Batman. The Silver Age is when they sort of revamped everything and gave us the visual look that we still kind of have. But Superman, Batman, the Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkman, the Atom, they're all Silver Age characters. And if you did not know, if you were just a blind person and only heard them talking, you couldn't tell the difference.
Hmm.
They were all the same guy, square jaw superhero number 1 through 5,
Yeah.
right? And that was Hal Jordan. And over the years, people hooked into Hal. Now, other people got hold of him and did stuff to him and tried to make him interesting. But at the end of the day, from my point of view, Hal Jordan is a cipher. There's nothing there for my brain to hook into. Now, there's a lot for sort of the kind of fantasy hero worship for an audience member to sort of pour themselves into. But when you get right down to it, is there something that you could think of that Hal might say that only Hal Jordan would ever say? No. You can do that with Batman.
Hmm.
You can do that with Wonder Woman. You can definitely do that with Superman. But
Right.
there's nothing about Hal that makes him distinctive. Whereas all the other Green Lanterns, literally all of the other Green Lanterns, you can do that with the possible exception, ironically, of John Stewart, right? For the reasons we already talked about.
Yeah.
But here's what happened. The cartoon showed up. People don't understand the numbers involved. There's at most maybe 300,000 people in the United States that buy comics on a regular basis.
Hmm.
Okay. Conservatively, there's a minimum of 1.5 million people that watch the Green Lantern on Justice League every week. That's conservatively the baseline, right? In reality, it was probably closer to something like 2.3 million people. These people aren't reading comic books. They're just watching the show.
Yep.
So the people that knew what a Green Lantern was, those people only know what a Green Lantern is based on watching that show. Which to me, I was like, oh, great. That means if they ever make a Green Lantern movie, it's going to be the John Stewart Green Lantern movie.
Yeah.
But as soon as that show was done, immediately, even slightly before the show was done, once they knew it was going to be over, before the public knew it was going to be over, they immediately started sliding John out of the spotlight and started putting Hal into that spotlight. Now, I think that was a stupid business move. And I was very straightforward about it. I think it was a dumb move. How do we know? Because the black audience is largely invisible to white people. They don't understand how much money we spend on stuff, right? Or at least they didn't until the Black Panther showed up.
Yeah.
Right? They thought we only spent our money on rap music and clothes and stuff, silly things, right? But the Black Panther should have been a surprise to no one, the success of the Black Panther, because everyone in Black America is like, oh, this is going to be a success. I'm getting in the gym. I'm going to buy some new clothes. We're going to get a church excursion. We're going to go see this movie. Yeah. All the Black Panther had to do was not suck.
Yeah.
It didn't even have to be good. And it was amazing. But it didn't have to be amazing because people were ready for that. Okay? If Warner Entertainment had kept John Stewart in the box and said, okay, we've got our Batman, we've got our Superman, we're trying to work out Wonder Woman, who's next? We got our little Flash show going, that's doing great. Cool with that. Let's do this Green Lantern movie. We don't have any color up in here. Meanwhile, Marvel, even they didn't have anybody front and center yet, every version of Marvel had a Latin or a black person that was dead center. And Nick Fury running through all of it as Sam Jackson. So they had their bases covered while they worked up to Black Panther, right? DC didn't have any of that, none of it. And it was silly, bad. It was bad for business to not go for that money. Now you tell me, there's no Black Panther movie, there's no Chadwick Boseman, there's none of that has happened yet. Okay? Forget the actual Green Lantern movie. Forget that. You're taking John Stewart as the base character. Idris Elba is running around. He's becoming a giant star at this point. Yep. And you go, it's a risk, but remember, Robert Downey Jr., his comeback movie was Iron Man. Yep. People forget about that. I'm like, no, this was a guy who was so high he was climbing into other people's backyards and going to jail every 5 minutes because he couldn't kick his drug problem. He was box office poison. And I'm sure when Favreau said, I want it to be Robert Downey Jr., I'm sure a bunch of people were like, are you crazy? We can't insure your movie. Like, he's crazy. No, he's fine now. Yeah, you say that, but every other director said that too. Right? Okay. So you can't really say that that you couldn't insure it or anything like that. Right. If you'd made a good Green Lantern movie, or not even a Green Lantern, just announce Idris Elba is going to be the Green Lantern. Exactly the same thing that happened with Black Panther would have happened with John Stewart, possibly more so because he's an American superhero who could be anybody that you might meet. Before T'Challa becomes the Black Panther, which, by the way, people forget, he wasn't the Black Panther when you met him. He didn't become the Black Panther until his dad died. He was just the son of the king. The king was the freaking Black Panther. Till that bomb went off, he was not the Black Panther, right? John Stewart is a Marine who gets a magic ring that makes him a galactic cop. You telling me that people wouldn't have lost their shit?
Yeah.
Pardon me. They would have. Black America would have mobilized behind John. They would have. They just would have, because they've been waiting for it. Yep. You saw what happened. It's not like they knew who the Black Panther was. They didn't know who the Black Panther was. Come on.
It's one of those things where you kind of wish that with the say the pantheon of heroes that DC has, of color, that there would have been some follow-up to Black Panther. I mean, even if not even before. Yeah, so, and it's crazy, and even as, like I said, as Trek fans and also as Star Wars fans, we know that there's so many species out there that you can focus on and tell all these stories about. So I like that you're doing something that doesn't just focus on Hal Jordan.
By the way,
Yeah.
going with this controversy. So I had
Yeah.
said all this on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
versions of that on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you know how it is. People go, "What's your hot take on
Yep.
that'll make other fans get mad at you?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, I'm not a fan of Hal Jordan.
Yeah.
All of this was as a fan. Nobody had
Yeah.
hired me to write for DC. I was
Mm-hmm.
never thinking about writing for DC at this point. It never
Yeah.
occurred to me that I would ever be anywhere near a Green Lantern ever,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, but even if I had been, I never lie. I always say the same thing. I'm not backing off of anything. I still
Mm-hmm.
feel exactly the same way I wrote in those posts. Okay?
Most
I'm
definitely.
not saying I don't feel that way. All
Mm-hmm.
I said is I'm a professional
Mm-hmm.
and you got to work with the cards they give you. You can't come in and go, okay, well, that's all over now.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it like this. That's not
Yeah.
how it works. So everybody can relax on that. But I'm focused on John. I always said that from day one. That's the pitch they bought. That's the pitch I pitched. And that's the story I came to tell. So
That's,
if John's not your boy and you feel like if it's about John, I can't read it, then
mm-hmm.
it was never going to satisfy you no matter what, because it's
Right.
going to be about John.
That's what's up. There